And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another tremendous installment from very high above all the puerile and insipid forms of Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics Studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to the program. Happy Tuesday. I trust everybody had a great weekend. I know that I did. Actually, I had more than a great weekend. I watched my Texas Rangers last night put a hurting on the Oakland Athletics. And now, if it were last year, you might say that, it's not really saying too much. The A's weren't exactly doing much better than the Rockies. Not so this year. Oakland is one of the hottest teams in baseball, and they certainly got walloped last night. So good day for me. Now, there's a lot to talk about on the program besides baseball. And actually, do you know what tomorrow is, Ken?
No, I'm blissfully ignorant.
Blissfully ignorant of the world of baseball? Well, tomorrow, of course, is Jackie Robinson Day. The day that Jackie Robinson was admitted into major... admitted is probably... Yeah, well, that might be a good word. It was his debut into Major League Baseball, the first black player in the major leagues. Now, and the interesting part about this whole thing is that he was not the only player that teams were looking at. He just happened to be the first one. And I mean, he was a great baseball player. There's no doubt about that. One of the legends of the game. But tomorrow is Jackie Robinson Day. I'm looking forward to it. And what I'm planning for tomorrow's program is, a brief segment just to talk about some baseball, America's pastime, and Jackie Robinson Day. And we'll just do a little baseball history. There are other things that are going on in the world besides politics, though politics tends to consume most of what we talk about. And that being the case, a couple of the big stories, and we'll just hit these briefly. I've got a lot to talk about on the program as it relates to different races that are happening in Wyoming. But let's begin with a piece by Hugh Hewitt in Fox News. And this one's entitled, "The U.S.-Iran Negotiations in Islamabad Became Reykjavik 2.0. And I quote, from the moment the talks between the United States and Iran commenced in Islamabad on Saturday, only one of the three results could follow. Munich in 1938, the U.S. appeasing Iran, Reykjavik in 1986 with the diplomatic deadlock, or Appomattox in 1865. I think we can all probably assume that Appomattox, or the complete surrender of Iran, was not going to happen over these peace talks. Somehow, the negotiators from Iran think that they have something to negotiate with. And really, the only thing that they've got is blackmail. I mean, there's nothing else that they have except that, hey, we've put some mines in the Strait of Hormuz and nobody knows where they're at. Other than that, they really don't have anything to negotiate with. The blockade...
I'd tell them, take the rest of your Navy and start cruising up and down, you'll find them.
Well, yeah. Well, they don't really have a Navy anymore.
Well, they got to have some.
Well, according to a press release from the White House, the U.S. destroyed pretty much all of Iran's ships, with the exception of some of their little smaller, what they call fast boats. But other than that, that's pretty much all they have. I mean, I guess they do have a Navy. It happens to be at the bottom of the sea and not the top. But, as far as like having any military capability left, I mean, they really don't. Let's see here. A blockade of all shipping from all Iranian ports commenced Monday at 10 a.m. Pursuant to President Trump's order to the U.S. Navy. The Navy had already commenced mine clearing operations in international waters in the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump has indicated that renewed strikes on the teetering Islamic Republic of Iran are possible as well. You ever notice that all these dictators have to insert the word republic into the name of their new country? The Islamic Republic of Iran. There's nothing even that resembles a republic in Iran, or the People's Republic of China, or the People's Republic of North Korea. None of those have anything to do with the word republic. But it was and continuing with the piece, it was a very bad weekend for terrorists in the Middle East, as well as for the mothership regime that supports them all in Tehran. The Ayatollahs and the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps that prop them up are down to their fifth-string generals and the impotent elected officials of Iran who have, and I heard this morning on Fox News that even the people that are negotiating or who were negotiating in the talks really didn't have the authority to make any decisions whatsoever, and that was one of the big stumbling blocks. So, yeah, I mean, you call them negotiations, call it a meeting, call it whatever you want, but really, it's the Islamic fundamentalists that are in control of Iran. The fact that these two men are orchestrating, and by the way, it's Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu that this is referring to. The fact that these two men are orchestrating the strategic defeat of a sinister lunatic regime that as recently as January 8th and 9th murdered more than 30,000 of its own people in 2 days has left in America around the world working through cognitive dissonance. It would be amusing were the Iranian people not suffering so under the boot of Islamic fanatics. And this is where I wanted to begin. And often these conversations result in a discussion of what the media is doing. There's a lot of people in the media, most of them podcast types, who are being very critical of the president for doing anything in Iran, when the reality is that Iran has been a real problem for the world for 47 years since the 1979 revolution. And I mean, they've in many cases held the world hostage for oil or for their nuclear ambitions. And it just so happens that President Trump was the first person to say, we're not going to take it anymore. Now, I mean, there are lots of members of Congress that are saying that he's, violating the Constitution by not asking them first. That's a really dumb position, if you ask me. Why would a president who's planning a military operation go to Congress first? The very first thing that would happen is whatever operation it was would be leaked to the media, and there would probably be a couple of phone calls made to whichever country the strike was against, in this case, Iran. So, I mean, you have to think logically about a lot of what you're seeing in the media. That why wouldn't we do something with Iran? Does Iran pose? Well, did they pose a threat? Well, I suppose they still do pose a threat to our country through their terrorist proxies. Lots of times on this program, we've talked about how there are terror cells in this country. They got in during the Biden administration. So, I mean, why wouldn't you take out the world's chief sponsor of terror? And, one of the arguments is, well, you're creating more instability in the Middle East. Well, please tell me how much more stable it was before Trump did something with Iran. I mean, the Middle East was not stable at all. Iran continued to lob missiles into Israel and several of their other neighbors. So, I mean, what stability was there? I don't really see any. And what about the people in Iran? And it seems like in every presidency, well, that I can remember, there's at least one uprising in Iran. The last one there was one during the Biden administration, but I don't think that he knew of what was going on, and certainly the people around him didn't know. But probably the most prominent one was the Green Revolution during the Obama administration. They call it the Green Revolution, but really there wasn't a revolution. One of the pictures I'm never going to forget is there was a wall where somebody had spray painted, "Mr. President, please help us." And that's when Obama was president. And of course, he didn't do anything except give them a couple pallets full of cash. So the United States has a long history of appeasing Iran, much like Neville Chamberlain, peace in our time now, when he was negotiating with Adolf Hitler. I mean, that's a pretty sophomoric view of the world, and it's one that liberals buy into. And there's even opinion pieces in our state of people being critical of the president's actions. Well, I just don't think that that's a big picture view of the world. I don't think that it's a fair assessment of how things are working. I mean, the truth is there are evil people in the world, and until you accept that premise, you're not going to be able to solve anything. There are evil people in the world. There are countries that want to kill us, and Iran happens to be one of those. So I'm all in favor of what's happening in Iran. I think it should have been done years ago. And it's, I guess better late than never in this case. But there's no reason why we shouldn't have completely eliminated the threat that Iran poses. So that's top of the news nationally, I think, unless, of course, you want to talk about Eric Swalwell. Did you see any of that, Agent 29? that there's no problem with Eric Swalwell. I didn't do anything wrong, and then all of a sudden he resigns from Congress.
I deliberately hid from a lot of things over the weekend because I needed the weekend. And one thing I did, you're talking about navies.
Yeah.
I watched a film called The Command, and it's about the Russian nuclear sub that blew in half. Okay. And ended up killing the entire crew. Didn't have to kill the entire crew, but the Russians were too proud and too afraid.
Just blew it up anyway.
It blew up on accident, and they were having trouble recovering their crew. The British had people right on line. Anyway, watch it for yourself sometimes. Really good depiction, I think, of what happened. It was very, very well done, and kind of it illustrates the problem of there are evil people in the world.
Well, there are. And you can't, the only way that you can have a negotiation, like an actual negotiation, is if you have honest brokers. You have people that are willing to talk about whatever issue is up for debate. If you don't have that, then it's not really a negotiation, which is why I think that President Vance was sent over there to just kind of deliver a message. It's our way or the highway.
Yeah, and the way that you know that you don't have that is one side just flat shuts down.
Yeah.
And that's what happened in the film that I spoke of. That's also what happened over here. The Iranians came to this thinking they had a tremendous amount of leverage, and
they don't.
Trump says, good luck with that. They do have a substantial amount of enriched uranium. It's just buried so deep they can't get to it.
Right. So. Well, and that's one of the sticking points, too, that there will be no enrichment of Iran. There will be no nuclear, progress. Progress is the wrong word. No nuclear development in the country. Zero, zilch, nada. And whatever enriched uranium you have is going to be turned over.
That issue in the Bench of Hormuz, I refuse to call it a strait.
Okay.
Because it's not straight.
It's not straight.
It's very bent.
All right. Well, let's get to some news in the Cowboy state. Let's see here. Where do you want to start? Should we start with all the races, or should we talk about what Megan Degenfelder is not doing again?
Maybe we should just start with an early day off.
We are not doing that, Ken. Why is it that we start the program and 15 minutes in, you're ready to go pack it in?
Because I've already heard all this stuff.
No, you haven't.
Okay. Surprise me then.
Okay, let's talk about the piece in the cow pie. State superintendent, you know what? I don't think I want to start there. I want to talk about the races.
Thank you.
Well, we are going to get to this. Don't get your hopes up. I mean, it is right here on the top of the stack of stuff. But let's talk about the races in general. If you missed the podcast over the weekend, first of all, what the heck is wrong with you? But second, I went to great lengths to talk about both the congressional race and the governor's race, and just kind of give you a rundown of all of the candidates.
It's that representatives race is
Mhm.
actually more like a smash-up derby.
Well, that's
It's
why.
a demolition derby, not a race.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at my chalkboard, the races or the mobs, because I mean, I am still seeing people online. There was a comment I saw from, I think the guy was in, the western part of the state. I'm thinking about jumping into the race for Hegemon's seat. Really? With the 11 other people? And I just saw this morning that there's a libertarian that thinks that he's entering the race. The reason I say that, no offense to any libertarians out there, but if you are a libertarian and you're running for Congress, it is going. Two things are going to have to happen. You are going to have to be an outstanding candidate. You're going to three things are going to happen. You're going to have to be extraordinarily well funded, and it's going to have to take an act of God for that to happen. And the reason I say that is Wyoming is over 73% Republican. And the reason I say that is it was 73% that voted for Trump the first time. It was slightly over 70% that voted for him the third time. If you look at voter registration in the state, it's predominantly Republican. Here in Sheridan County, it's 86% of the people that live here, or of registered voters, rather, are registered Republicans. So, I mean, it is going to take a huge lift for a third-party candidate to have any influence whatsoever.
You have to be aware of the fact that most of the voting public is blissfully unaware of most of what is going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I've said many times, the biggest threat to democracy, especially here, is voter apathy.
Yes.
You got to do something to shake it up.
Well, and I talked to a representative over the weekend that held a town hall, and I asked him, well, okay, so did the check thing come up? And he said, actually, yeah, it did. I said, all right, so what was what happened? And he said, the message I got over and over and over was, we don't give a crap about the check thing. And I think the reason for that is most people really were not paying attention to it. And what happens in Cheyenne? It's like the megaphone in the bubble. Something happens and it's a big controversy down there, but the vast majority of the state, regardless of the media's efforts, really don't hear about it. And if they do, with that situation in particular, I think most people saw it for what it was. A Democrat and liberal attempt to, one, create chaos, two, to take control of whatever, however much control they could get of the legislature, but three, that it was a distraction. And, and I think most people, like you said, they're blissfully unaware of what, most of what happens.
It was a distraction, I think, but the key to that is a distraction from what?
From the actual doing the business of the people.
Not just doing business, but from how business has been done virtually forever. And that's what our side is bringing to the table, is we're exposing what really goes on there. And the more of that gets exposed, the more desperate they become.
Well,
the more desperate they become, the more nasty their tactics.
Well, there's nothing more dangerous than a person that has nothing left to lose. And in this case, the Democrats and the Redcoats, and I think if you pay attention to, perhaps not now, but a lot of the media coverage at the tail end of the legislative session and directly after it, I mean, it was the check incident, it was the Wyoming Business Council and the University of Wyoming. Really, that was the focus. And very little on anything else that happened. And there were a lot of good things. And
if you judge from my emails, and maybe I got a disproportionate amount of emails because, number one, I was right in the center of like the UW and the Wyoming Business Council thing. And number two, probably I got some emails that other people didn't get because people sending them knew that they would fall on deaf ears elsewhere. Yeah. It was by no means overwhelmingly, the other side would like to have you believe that we went out and tried to do something and failed horribly because the people rose up and said, we don't want it. that's really not the case. But if they want to believe that, Mr. Martin, if that's what you want to keep publishing, you go right ahead.
Mr. Martin. There's a great piece in on evidence-based Wyoming, and I mean, there's only a little bit of commentary, and then it's a discussion of how evidence-based Wyoming works. But he directly references Nate Martin's better. And Nate Martin, if you're unaware, that's Carly Provenza's husband.
Yeah, I was going to say, I should have called him Mr. Provenza.
Mr. Provenza. But he has run the very radical Better Wyoming. It used to be called Ella Wyoming. It's directly funded by Democrat Liz Storr. It's a radical leftist political operation that, if you get, and I'm sure a lot of people have got stuff in the mail from them, and the tagline you'll see is Better Wyoming plus research, I think. And it's not research, it's a partisan outfit. And if you pay any attention to it, you can see that. But evidence-based Wyoming flat out says, look, none of what they do is based on research.
There was a Facebook ad that came out, and I should have thought to send this to you. I'm kind of looking at it now, but it's a wide angle shot of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 legislators, and half of them are not Freedom Caucus. But it says Wyoming, quote unquote, Freedom Caucus. It has a picture of a check. We're for sale. Name your price.
Oh man!
And it's interesting to just take a look at that. Maybe give your description.
Wow. Okay, let's do this.
Might
Why
have
don't
to
you
send that
to me, and we'll during the break I'll get it arranged so you could look at it. That's something else. One of those isn't even a legislator, nor is he a member of the Freedom Caucus. But anyway, so let's run down some of the candidates. So you've got David Geralt. I interviewed him on this program. Former staffer for Cynthia Lummis, worked at the Pentagon, Army Ranger. I think he gave me a pretty good interview, but his name recognition is way low. I mean, he's a brand new candidate, and it's not to say that if you don't have name recognition in the state that you can't win. I mean, weird things happen in elections, but basically a relatively unknown. And like I said, I thought he gave me a great interview. But as far as being able to win a statewide campaign in a state where, like Ken just said, a lot of people are blissfully unaware of what happens. I mean, it is a pretty big lift. Not to say that it can't happen, but that one, pretty tough. There's Jillian Balow, the former state superintendent of public instruction, who, interestingly enough, announced her candidacy 4 years to the day of her quitting her job in Wyoming and moving to Virginia to take a position in Glenn Youngkin's administration, where she goofed up their budget to the tune of like $2 million. And then she comes back and decides she's going to be our representative.
Just the fact that she didn't finish her term before is enough for me to say never again.
Well, exactly right. And that is, man, if you are an aspiring politician and you ask for a job and then you quit it, I mean, you're going to have to overcome that. Right? And I think that's a pretty big hurdle to jump over. Then we have Reed Reisner. Oh, man, what could we say about Reed?
Nothing, you'll get sued.
Now, Reed, all of this is my opinion. I know that you and I are on the bingo board of people who might get sued, but
yeah, kind of proud of that personally.
Well, you know that you have made it when you're on
I'm somebody
on the YO Rhino Rocket bingo card. So I'm not exactly sure what Reed's campaign strategy is, except that it is to get more views and more clicks on his stuff. Recently, what he's been doing is really short YouTube reels that some of them are pretty funny. The one I played on the podcast was him standing on the field at War Memorial Stadium saying "No more fat kids," and his wardrobe choice. Well, the way I put it in the podcast is, I have seen better wardrobe choices at 1 a.m. at Walmart. And you can just let your imagination do the work on that one. If you've never been to a Walmart at 1 a.m., you can understand what comes out of the woodwork at that hour of the morning. But really, all he's been doing is, Facebook Reels and spending a lot of cash on TV and radio advertisements. I mean, a ton. It is. I was watching the Rangers game last night, and I bet I saw, if I didn't see a dozen Reed Reisner ads during that entire baseball game, I didn't see any. I mean, it is truly incredible the amount of money that he's spending. But big question though is, where is that money coming from? One thing that I plan to do fairly soon is to go through what we know of candidates' financing at this 10 seconds. Which, I mean, we don't really have a lot of the reports. The FEC reports, they're due once a quarter. And so, it's kind of hard to get a beat on where a candidate's funding is coming from. And actually, in Wyoming, if you're not a statewide candidate, or a federal candidate, I should say, you're finding out your campaign fundraising doesn't happen until a week before the primary. So, by the way, Agent 29, that is a law we need to work on. Candidates should have to disclose their financing way ahead of time.
I don't know. I think it's better for me to keep that $30,000 check secret for a while.
Yeah. If you so you did receive the $30,000 check.
I'm not saying.
Well, it doesn't exist.
If I just received a check for $30,000, would I be sitting here?
No, probably not. That was another great show. It was Wednesday's edition of the podcast, and it's what did I call it? Let me look. I got to get the title for you. But it's the picture that I used.
Picture turns your stomach.
It's Ed Cooper throwing a baseball, and at the bottom of it, I got bigger laughs out of the caption that I put on it than anything. And it says, obviously AI. Ed Cooper couldn't throw a baseball. Probably couldn't throw a baseball anyway. Let's see here. So Wednesday's edition of the show was called Cooper's Throwing Vaseline Balls. And I thought it was a pretty good discussion of, and the whole reason why I titled it that is that Cooper held a town hall over in Park County, and he straight up lied. First about the Freedom Caucus, and he couched it in, well, there's money being spent on Freedom Caucus members' campaigns. That's what I really meant. No. That is not what Ed Cooper said the first time. What he said the first time is it's a $30,000 campaign donation. Now, you might say that I'm splitting hairs, but words mean things, my friends. A campaign donation is a specific amount that is given to a candidate for their use. And a campaign spending on their behalf is something else entirely. That is another group that is, campaigning on behalf of a candidate. So the difference is who controls the money. And then the second thing that Ed Cooper lied his butt off about was, well, I didn't have a chance to vote on the library bill, so Honor Wyoming is lying about me. That's not true at all. House Bill 10 failed committee of the whole, and Ed Cooper voted against it. And so the reason why I couched the entire episode in dirty things that pitchers might do is that it is the media whose job it is to call balls and strikes that completely ignore all of these things that candidates do, specifically lying leftist redcoat candidates. So we have another guy that is that's jumped into the race for the House of Representatives, and we briefly talked about this last week, but I think this deserves more discussion, and that is Teton County resident Steve Freeze. Now, Steve Freeze is the son of Foster Freeze, the gajillionaire who did run for Wyoming governor, 2018, I think it was. And, that was another race that had a whole bunch of people in it, and Foster ended up losing that race. But his son, Steve, now he's jumped into the congressional race. Here's what the Cowboy has to say about him, and I'll just read a couple of paragraphs on this. Quote, conservative activist Steve Freeze, son of former political candidate Foster Freeze, is running for the United States House seat. He and his family helped Charlie Kirk start Turning Point USA and describes his philosophy as pro-Trump, pro-life, and pro-gun. A Wyoming philanthropist and conservative thought leader entered the race. That's okay. So that was the caption underneath his picture. And so let's just again, Words are important. Word choice is important. And these say a Wyoming philanthropist and conservative thought leader has entered the Republican race for the state's lone U.S. House seat. So it leads the reader to believe that somewhere Freeze has been on the forefront of, conservative thought. If you're a conservative thought leader, that presumes that you've done some, publishing.
Yeah, it also kind of goes to the idea that somewhere there is some leaders. The ones that are coming up with all the ideas and telling everybody how to vote is kind of what I'm getting to. And I think it's quite different in true conservative circles than it is on the left. Most of the people I know that are actually capable and think about things end up being conservative. Those that feel about things.
Oh, yeah, I see where you're going.
Yeah, and so maybe we should have some liberal, touchy-feely leaders.
I don't think so. But when you insert the phrase conservative thought leader, it conjures up images, at least in my mind, of guys like William F. Buckley, Rush Limbaugh,
brandy and cigars.
No. But it conjures up images of people that have been pretty active in the conservative movement. And I got to tell you, and I have no idea who Steve Freeze is beyond him being the son of Lynn and Foster Freeze. So I don't know anything about him beyond that.
I'll completely agree with you there. Never have we. You don't see, if you have a big convention or something, you don't see him featured like Harmeet Dillon, featured as a prominent speaker or anybody. Nobody even knows really who he is, which is kind of scary.
Well, he has one of the same problems that David Geralt does. Zero name recognition.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so his last name, Freeze, that carries some influence in the state. A lot of people remember Foster Freeze pretty fondly. But as far as like Steve Freeze being active in Wyoming politics, no. I met him one time in Cheyenne, and that's after the ESA bill passed. But other than that, I had no idea
I wouldn't have known it if I met him.
And I don't think that most people would either. And so again, that's a big problem for the Wyoming voter, that they don't really pay all that much attention to what's going on. So I think that there's some name recognition problems there. And back to the piece, quote, and this is they're quoting Steve Freeze here. Quote, "I think my political philosophy is reflected in my history and working on the conservative movement," he told the Cowboy State Daily. "In the early 2000s, I helped raise the first $1 million for Tea Party Patriots. A few years later, I helped get Turning Point USA launched." Okay, I mean, both of those are good things. I know a lot of people in conservative circles that absolutely were right in the middle of the Tea Party movement. But I never heard the name Steve Freeze. It's not to say that he wasn't involved. I just have never heard the name.
Yeah, I would be another one. I was right in the middle of the Tea Party stuff.
Well, yeah, rallies here in town,
and I couldn't have told you. I mean, I knew who Foster was.
Sure. But. His dad. I mean, his dad's did a lot of really cool things in the state. Foster's Outriders, a lot of really great work. And helped out causes that most people would have never heard about before either. One interesting story is there's a gal in Buffalo, a friend of mine, won't mention her name on the show, but she set up a charity for people going through cancer. And what she would do, she called it, I think, her cancer closet, something like that. But what she would do is have blankets made, stocking caps made, and collect those things for people that are suffering from cancer. And I and some other people wrote a letter to Foster Freeze and said, "Hey, this is a good cause right here." And he ended up giving a pretty sizable donation to that person. So he did a lot of work in the state with people that you'll probably never even heard of. But Steve, I really want to have him on the program. I think that would be a pretty interesting interview. I don't know anything about the guy, and so, hey, Steve, if you hear this, please come on the program. I know I've already invited you one time formally before, so come on the show. So let's see here. We've gone a little bit long, so let's go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue with the discussion of the races, or the mobs, depending on how you look at it. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Hunting season. Right about now, you're off with all of your pals, stalking the big gigantic elk or buck mule deer that you've been thinking about all summer long. And your lovely wife is at home, probably enjoying her time without you. But soon, my friend, all of that is going to come to a screeching halt. And I want you to think about just one little thing. She's able to park her car inside the garage because all of your hunting crap is with you right now. Now, if you'd like the marital bliss to continue, I suggest you make a call to Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. They can build you a garage or a barn or any other type of metal structure for you to store all of your toys in so that your wife can continue parking inside the garage. And you can avoid sleeping on the couch for the next month or two. Call Morton Buildings. Their phone number is 307-674-2532. Get them to build you a metal building before it's too late. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday, moving through another busy broadcast hour. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. So before the break, we were talking about the congressional race and the slew of candidates that have decided to, who have said that they're going to seek the Republican nomination. And that's another thing that I probably should have mentioned at the beginning. We're not even in the filing period yet. None of these people have actually walked into a courthouse and filled out paperwork saying that they're actually going to run for this seat. So a lot of this right now is pie in the sky, to quote Megan Felder, that I mean, it's just a lot of people who are saying they're going to run. And another thing to keep in mind, too, not saying that this is any of these candidates, but a lot of politicians enter a race to build up a political war chest and then don't finish the race. For whatever reason, they drop out, and it's mainly a campaign fundraising move. I'm not saying that's any of these candidates, but that's something to keep in mind. So another lesser character in the race is John Romero Martinez. Funny guy. He served one term in the Wyoming House of Representatives. He told all of his voters that he was a conservative, and then one of the very first things he did is filed a bill for Medicaid expansion. He was handily and embarrassingly defeated in his second run for the legislature by his cousin, Tamara Trujillo. And since then, he has been I don't even know the right word. Kind of a joke down in Cheyenne. I mean, I was trying to think of a nicer term, but I don't know that there is one. If you go to his Facebook page and look at his announcement, it looks like something you might see in Hawaii. Palm trees and a bay, and I mean it's really ridiculous. I don't know that he's really a serious candidate. Another guy we haven't really heard anything from is Matt McGinnis. I saw his announcement. I think I first saw it in Sweetwater Now, but he hasn't done or said anything since his announcement. So who knows what's going to happen there. Another guy that we don't know a lot about is Kevin Christensen down in Casper. I think he's former Air Force. Got a lot of ribbons on his chest. And, there isn't a whole heck of a lot on his website either. There's Frank Chapman, who, by the way, Frank Chapman is going to be on the program here very soon. I've got to respond to an email to him today, but he is a wealthy guy, another guy that lives in Jackson, bought a ranch. He is not from Wyoming. He's from there. I saw some stuff about him from Florida and from Ohio. And so, he's another guy we don't know that much about, but rich fella from Jackson. And then we have Dennis Beitman. Old Bo. So Bo, of course, is the current Senate president. And, he has the distinct honor of being one of the most conservative voters in the legislature. And then when he got into office, one of the more liberal members of the legislature. In fact, according to Evidence-Based Wyoming, in the past legislative session, he voted consistently with the Republicans a whopping 56.8% of the time. Can you believe that? A little over 50% of the time, he actually voted with his party, which the reverse of that is over 40% of the time he voted with the Democrats. So he almost single-handedly took what was a fairly conservative Senate and moved it starkly to the left. And that is his legacy in the Wyoming legislature. But if you look at any of his ads, of course, he's the most conservative thing since William F. Buckley himself, which, it's just not true. If you look at his voting since he's been the Senate president, it's he took a sharp left turn, a wide left turn, as it were, to the Democrat Party and the left in Wyoming. And let me just be really clear about one thing. Actions have consequences. Whatever you do is going to have a result elsewhere. And if you are a longtime politician in Wyoming, if you've been involved in Wyoming politics, you already know what the results of your actions are going to be. That if you vote on a particular piece of legislation, you know what effect that's going to have for your future electoral politics or prospects. You know what's going to happen perhaps to some of your other allies. You know what that's going to look like for the rest of your party. And so if what you are doing, if your actions are helping the left, then you are, by definition, part of the left. We could always say, well, I didn't intend it to happen to work out that way. It just did. Well, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. And if you know that what you're doing is helping the left, well, then you're part of the left. And let me just give you the rundown on Dennis. So he gave arguably 9 of the 10 committees in the Senate to very liberal people. So that's the first one. Second, he made a deal with Senator Slithers, who, we could go look at the numbers, but Slithers is one of the more liberal people in the Wyoming Senate. He made a deal with her to make her the majority floor leader, which in both the House and the Senate, the majority floor leader pretty much controls the agenda for what's going to be discussed in the chamber. And so not only did he give away the committees to the left, he gave away the majority floor leader position to the left. And so those actions resulted in what I would say is a very liberal Senate, very much so. A lot of really conservative bills went to the Senate to die. And that's kind of the joke down in Cheyenne is the Senate is the place where House bills go to die. And that's largely what happened. A lot of the really common sense conservative pieces. I mentioned House Bill 10 earlier. That was the bill to get pornography out of libraries. That one died on committee of the whole in the Senate. There were a lot of election integrity stuff that died over there. It just a lot of different things.
There's a whole tussle of them never even got brought up on the last day.
Yeah, and that's the other part of it. I guess I should have explained that. So the majority floor leader and the Senate president, the Senate president more so than the majority floor leader, but the Senate president can just put a bill in his drawer and it just never goes anywhere. And actually, it's not a drawer; it's a locked cabinet. But
or they can just gavel out, go home,
which is what
let
they did
the
a
clock
lot.
run out.
Yeah. Now, the majority floor leader, Senator Slithers, she could just continually move a piece of legislation down on the list, and then they gavel out, and it dies. And there were a lot of examples of that. So, and here's the really confusing thing, and this is why you got to do your homework. Confusing for Wyoming voters is everybody that I'm mentioning claims that they're a conservative. Well, how do you tell the difference? Well, you have to do your own homework. I mean, you got to know. Well, the first thing that you should do is listen to Cowboy state politics, and then you should do your homework. I try really hard to give you a bead on who all of these people are. So then there's Chuck Gray, the ninth person on my list. Not ninth because of any other reason. That I think that he is the one example of a really conservative person in this race. I mean, he has a long history of very conservative things. There's a lot of really important pieces of legislation with his name on them. One of them happened to be the crossover voting bill. I mean, Chuck had worked on that for the 6 years that he was in the House of Representatives. And, he worked really hard on it. And I think that one's a really important piece. Voter ID, that was Chuck Gray's bill. I mean, there's a lot of them. And during his time as Secretary of State, I think that he's really made an effort to use the office of the Secretary of State for its intended purpose, and that is to drive election reforms in this state.
Well, he's the one the other side is the most afraid of, obviously, because look at all the things they're throwing at him.
Oh,
just trying to get something to stick, He turned over sensitive voter information to the feds. Well, he complied with the law, and anything he turned over is readily available to anybody that bothers to go look.
Yeah, I was just going to hammer you on that whole sensitive voter information.
Yeah,
thing.
so there's that, but that's how they're posing it. That's how they're presenting it. Now there are a bunch more allegations coming out, and if you're a prayer person, pray for Chuck.
Yeah, well, so a good point. The media has tried pretty hard to make a big deal out of complying with a federal request for election data. Now, Ken, as you rightly mentioned, anybody can get their hands on, voter registration data. I've got a huge file of it on this computer right now. Everything from 2020 all the way through 2000. I don't think I have 2024. I've got 2016 through 2022. But all you got to do is go to
much of the rest of it myself.
Yeah, I mean, you just go to the Secretary of State's website and you do a records request, and you can get your hands on any of it. So first, none of it is confidential. Second, none of it is really sensitive. And third, he was complying with a federal request, which he had the Attorney General look over before he did it, before he complied. And the Attorney General, Keith Couts, signed off on it. So all of this, whatever controversy, is all drummed up. So there is a piece in the Cowpie. It's on, right. If it were a newspaper, we would say it's above the fold. But this one's at the top of the page. And it's entitled, Cheyenne Attorney Files Complaint for Criminal Investigation of Chuck Gray. This is the same guy that complains about Chuck Gray all the time. A Cheyenne-based attorney is asking Wyoming authorities to investigate Secretary of State Chuck Gray for alleged election-related crimes. George Powers says Gray violated state election law by giving, quote, and this is one of the dirty tricks that the Cowpie often does. If it is a conservative that's making a claim, when they write an article, they'll put whatever claim it is in quotation marks. In this case, they didn't do that with the word sensitive, which none of this is sensitive anyway. It's not confidential, none of those things. Giving sensitive voter data to the Department of Justice. George Powers on Monday submitted a complaint to Attorney General Keith Couts, alleging, quote, there is a reasonable basis to believe, end quote, that Gray violated the state's election law by giving sensitive voter data to the Department of Justice. When Secretary Gray released the unredacted voter rolls to the DOJ, he willingly and knowingly released information that was confidential under Wyoming law. No, it's not confidential, wrote Powers. He released these confidential records, again, not confidential, in response to a mere request. He was never served with a subpoena or a court order. He was never compelled to release those records. He simply turned over records that were protected by Wyoming law without objection. Now, again, none of that is really true. Those records are not confidential, nor are they sensitive. And if you know what, Ken, let's just, before we go any further, let me get to the right file, and I will prove it to you that these are neither sensitive nor are they confidential. So what I'm about to show you is the election data from the 2022 election. And I think this is the general one. So you can see last name, first name, middle name, registration date. There's the street address from the registration. What else we got here? There's a whole bunch in here. Where you live, there's your address, your mailing address, your town, and your voter registration, your precinct number, the house number, the Senate district. I mean, this is what George Powers is complaining about. Now, how did I get this? I submitted a records request to the Secretary of State, and I think when I got this, the Secretary of State was Ed Buchanan. So it's not, it's not anything that is confidential or sensitive.
Well, anybody that is running, for example, I have the same things. Anybody that's running for an office can go and they'll make you a copy. You
don't even have to be running for office.
Yeah, I was going to say, or if you're working on somebody's campaign, even if you're just looking at it, I don't know what all the parameters are.
There aren't any.
But it's really...
Yes.
Well, they'll hide behind some. You might go in there
try.
and you might go in there and ask for this. Oh, we can't do that. We have to have this, or
Yeah, and here is so look at this column over here. Let me just highlight that one. So that column, it says voter ID. That's the number that is assigned to an individual voter. So you would think that might be confidential, but it's not in any way, shape, or form. And so. So anyway, this George Powers guy, he's claiming that it's confidential when in reality it's not. Continuing, Gray, in a Monday statement, told the Cowboy, asserting that the radical left and the media will stop at nothing to undermine our work to ensure election integrity and security, and this is nothing more than Trump derangement syndrome, clothed in an attempt to use lawfare and the left-wing media to attack my actions on election integrity. Because Gray has said repeatedly in public statements that he complied with a lawful request from the federal government in close consultation with the Wyoming Attorney General's office, Powers is asking Couts to have an independent third party, like a district court judge, appoint a special prosecutor. Okay, so this article goes on and on and on about those records. And none of it, like I say, none of it is, confidential or anything. But this George Powers guy, he's one of the radical leftists that continually tries to attack Secretary of State Chuck Gray for any reason whatsoever. And just about every piece that the Cowboy publishes about Secretary Gray, I mean, it ends up in a very similar way. All right, so that covers the House race. And again, there's a Democrat that's jumped into it, and there's a Libertarian guy that says he's running. But really, the real race for the U.S. House of Representatives is the Republican primary. So right now, those are the candidates that are running. And the only person pictured, well, and I'm referring to an article on the Open Range Record. It was written before Steve Freeze jumped in the race. So really, there's 10 people running, a couple of other folks. After the break, we'll talk about the governor's race. Now, there aren't nearly as many people so far in that race, but we need to talk about that one too. And we'll do that when we come back. Yeah, I know. The weather seems to be toying with us. 60 one day, 42 the next, and pretty soon, my friends, those 6s and 4s are going to turn into 3s and 2s. Though we all want to avoid it, that white stuff is coming, my friends, and you will be shoveling the walk in it. It's cold, it's unpleasant, and nobody likes to do it.
But you could make it just a little bit more comfortable and prevent your feet from turning into a giant block of ice. In fact, you could keep them nice and warm and toasty, and your toes will never even know that they're outside. The rest of you may be frozen solid, but at least your feet won't be. To make all this happen, you just need a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. To get you a pair, go to their website, thebuffalowoolco.com. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Are you one of those guys that listen to the president just a little bit too closely and now you're tired of winning? Are you getting the feeling that there's been way too many good things happening in our country and you just can't take it anymore? Well, if you are, and you think you should follow Rosie O'Donnell's example and get the heck out of Dodge, you need to call Rebecca Bextel at eXp Realty. She'll make those foreign country living ideas a reality for you. All you have to do is call 307-699-3519, and she'll make sure some freedom-loving, red-blooded American will now live in the home that you no longer want. If you want to sell your house, or if you want to buy one that's way better than the house you have right now, give Rebecca a call. Again, her phone number is 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is only going to continue to expand. The Cowboy State Politics Podcast. This program, Cowboy State Politics Live. And don't forget about the Open Range record, too. There's a lot of stuff coming from yours truly, and you don't really want to miss any of it. All right, so during the break, we set up that picture so you could see what Agent 29 is referring to. And go ahead and show it to him, Ken. So it says, Wyoming Freedom Caucus, we're for sale, name your price. Obviously alleging that there's bribery happening when it was a lawful campaign donation.
I want to look at a couple of people on there and talk about what great offenses they caused. So behind Darren is now the
U.S. Attorney from Wyoming.
U.S. Attorney from Wyoming. He had been a senator for a brief period and then got promoted, I guess you'd call it. I don't know.
Appointed.
That's a promotion, but appointed. Behind him is Kevin Campbell from Evansville. Kevin's great crime was that he authored a bill that could potentially make the state billions of dollars by taking being able to ship natural gas not as a raw product but as a product of Wyoming. And
right.
It's interesting, and I don't want to get buried in the weeds on it, but that was his crime, trying to help the state make a lot more money. The next guy over is Tony Locke, my dear friend Tony Locke. Tony's great crime was that he actually was instrumental in getting tax relief, property tax relief for the state.
No, Tony has worked his entire time in the legislature.
And
on that.
I'm not saying I did anything near as much as Tony did, but Jamie Lean and Tony and I were instrumental in getting that across a couple years ago when things got a little bit murky, got into trouble. You go through the rest on there, and I know every one of those people, and I believe every one of them is doing what they think is the very best for Wyoming. And I think part of the problem is we might just be right, and they cannot stand the idea that after all these years we would get the credit for making some good things happen.
Yeah, and if you look at that picture, I mean, it straight up says bribe on it. There was a legislative investigative committee, super special investigative committee, that concluded that no bribery happened because it was a lawful campaign donation.
Did I mention that half the people in that picture are not Freedom Caucus?
Yeah. And the best example of that is Darren Smith. Darren Smith is a U.S. attorney for Wyoming, and he was not, I mean, he wasn't in the legislature long enough to be even, by what we know, the Freedom Caucus standards. And he was in the Senate. There is no Freedom Caucus in the Senate.
Yeah, even if he had wanted to be in the Freedom Caucus, he didn't have a long enough record to be invited.
Yeah. So now where did this picture come from?
I found it on Facebook.
Well, yeah, I understand that, but who created
I
it?
I think that's probably one of our Freedom Caucus press conferences there in the Rotunda. And then they, of course, put the other background in there or whatnot. I would guess that we were standing there listening to whoever was speaking, which didn't necessarily mean, Carly Provenza's there. Does that mean she's Freedom Caucus?
Well, I mean, it's so, like, none of that stuff is true.
Well, Carly wouldn't be outed because her husband's the one doing this stuff.
Yeah. I mean, but none of it is true. And that just shows you the level that these people will go to try to destroy the Freedom Caucus or any conservative for that matter.
I just want to reiterate, what is it that we did that was outside the parameters of the Republican Party platform?
Nothing.
We're out there. We took a poll a couple of years ago and said, what are you in the state? What are you people most concerned with? And those are the things we took action on. And, we get lambasted and everything else for that. And I think the real reason behind it is they cannot stand the idea that what they consider Johnny-come-latelys, though many of us are not, could actually come in and run things better than what they were before. And
I think
they're laughing at me saying that. But
I think it's more fundamental than that, Ken. The reason they're so crazy about it is the mere suggestion that they're wrong. The mere suggestion, and the truth is most of them know what they're doing is destructive to the state, but it's their pure ideological position that, in the end, they're doing what's right, which, again, terms like right and correct and those things, generally speaking, they don't apply when you're setting up policies that take more money, that steal more money from Wyoming citizens. I mean, that's not helping the state. When you expand government, when you increase government spending, which necessarily means that you have to take more from Wyoming citizens, when you oppose anything that has to do with tax relief, and you only vote in favor of it when it's politically beneficial to you, I mean, the mere suggestion that anybody could stop any of that's what they find so offensive. That there's some upstart somewhere that would dare challenge them on any of their ideas. That is what they find more offensive than anything.
Did you happen to see my last Facebook post last night?
I did not. I was watching my Texas Rangers.
You might want to pull that up and read it off at some point.
The one that says if you're for bigger government, I'm probably not your guy.
Basically, yeah, and the other points that are on there. And I think, far be it from me to speak for the Freedom Caucus or to speak for the rest of the conservatives, but I think every one of those people in that picture would have wholeheartedly agreed with what I said, and not just in that picture, but there's probably 35 of them in the House that would wholeheartedly agree with what I expressed there. And I think that's what makes the difference. If you happen to believe that government has the answer to every societal ill, we're in a different world.
Well, I know somebody that does think that government has the solution to every societal ill.
Okay.
Go ahead and play the video from Mom Donnie.
Oh, I can hardly wait.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you're the person that thinks that government is the solution, well, then you're probably going to like this.
The inequities in this city, the racial inequities, are stark. We are talking about findings that have shown that the wealth of a median white household in the city is more than $200,000, while that of a black household is less than $20,000. This is not an indictment of any one New Yorker. It is an indictment, however, of policies and politics that have persisted for far too long. Our commitment now is to act upon these findings, to do so in concert with New Yorkers' comments, as we've now opened a public comment period for the next 30 days to ensure that we have a city where we are reckoning with the long history of racism here and starting to act upon a framework that puts equity right at the center of it. Thank you.
I kept thinking of Lloyd's comment.
Oh, yeah.
Horse crap.
Horse crap. So why did I show you that one? Because that sort of thinking leads inevitably from this sort of thinking.
We will draw this city closer together.
Oh, hold on here. I don't know things quite figured out yet. See, that was going to be so smooth.
What's not plugged in?
That was going to be so smooth, and I was going to be so proud of myself. Here it is.
We will draw this city closer together. We will replace the frigidity of rugged individualism with the warmth of collectivism. If our campaign demonstrated that the people of New York yearn for solidarity, then let this government foster it.
Let this government
The
foster
warmth
it.
of collectivism. Yeah, hell is warm, folks.
Yes, it is. Or this one.
This new age will be defined by a competence and a compassion that have too long been placed at odds with one another. We will prove that there is no problem too large for government to solve and no concern too small for it to care about.
Ooh, boy, that one should scare the crap out of you.
But you hear that sort of thing on the House floor.
I know you do.
It's scary.
That's why I'm playing it, because if you're one of these people that thinks that the Freedom Caucus is somehow a problem, well, you're probably the same type of person that believes this idea of big government and them being the solution to everybody's problem. But you do hear this sort of stuff on the House floor because there are some people who are very, very, very radical in both chambers. And so to answer your question, Ken, what exactly has the Freedom Caucus done that is against the Republican Party platform? And I would challenge anybody, in this audience, if you can think of anything that the Freedom Caucus has done that is diametrically opposed by the Republican Party platform. And I don't think that you can find anything. I mean, it's okay, so we shouldn't be picking
If
winners
you do,
and
we'll
losers.
change the platform.
But I mean, really, there isn't anything on there. Family values. There was House Bill 10 took a lot of static. How dare you tell parents, that they can't let their children have pornography in the public library?
We never said that.
That's not what I hear. How dare you do that, Ken? And a question that I never heard an answer to, and I was just hoping. You sit up in the gallery, and what goes through my head is, oh, say this, that would be beautiful. And sometimes it happens,
It's a lot easier when you're sitting up there to think of what to say.
Well,
when you're
absolutely
down
it is.
in front of the cameras.
But, that's not my position. So occasionally, somebody will get up to a mic and they'll say exactly what's going through your head. But a question I never heard asked was, so explain to me where it is the government's job to buy pornography for your children. Because the books that are in the public library, you paid for them.
Yeah, if you want your kids to have it, go get it.
Yeah, I mean, we do have this thing called the internet and Amazon, and you go buy it for your kids.
There's no shortage of sources.
No, there isn't. But again, if you're listening to the program today and you can think of something that the Freedom Caucus has done that is somehow opposed to the Republican Party platform, I would love to hear about it because I don't think there is one. All right, so let's talk about the governor's meandering, as Agent 29 put it during the break. It's not really a race because not everybody is running in the race, but it's for some of them it's more of a meandering. You got three candidates. There's Eric Barlow, who claims to be a conservative, and yet he has voted.
He's not meandering.
No, he is not meandering. Eric Barlow is everywhere, and it's you could definitely play one of those games. Well, where in the world where in the state is Eric Barlow? Because that guy is everywhere.
Yeah, and Brent Bien is not meandering. I think my comment was more toward the House race, but yeah, we see at least two people that are out there working their tail off.
Yeah, both Brent and Eric Barlow are doing a lot of campaigning, a lot of handshake politics, which is how you win a race. But let's start with Eric Barlow. So Eric Barlow voted in excess of 80% of the time with the Democrat Party for his entire legislative career. Over 80% of the time with the Democrat Party. His history before he was in electoral politics was definitely one of environmental activism. I mean, there's a really good article on the Open Range Record. Let me get the title for you real quick. That is a discussion of what Barlow has done in his past. It's entitled Born in a Barn, Eric Barlow and a History of Radical Environmental Politics in Wyoming. And it is, for a guy that claims to be a conservative, what's in this article is, I mean, there's no question that he is not a radical environmentalist. He teamed up to sue the state of Wyoming. He teamed up with an outfit called Earth Justice. Earth Justice is one of the organizations that has repeatedly sued the Trump administration. It was Eric Barlow's family that started the Powder River Basin Resource Council, the number one enemy of energy producers in the state. Now, maybe you could make an argument that the Powder River Basin Resource Council started out as a good thing, protecting landowners. Well, it didn't stay that way for long. They quickly became a environmentalist organization that just flat opposed energy development.
He introduced gun control to Wyoming under the guise of
Yes, he did.
Of being the opposite. That's one of the most reprehensible things in my mind.
Well, he did it knowing what it would do. I mean, he had to do it to get his bill passed so that he could appear to be pro-gun. And in the end, he subjected a lot of Wyoming citizens, former felons, to prosecution. There's one of them that happened at Bighorn, Randy Kane. I mean, he's the guy that, I have a picture of his certificate that says your rights are restored, that's signed by the Wyoming Department of Corrections. And that couldn't have been further from the truth.
I was privileged to watch the body cam of his arrest.
Oh.
And you can tell just by watching him, he had no idea that he was outside the law.
Yeah, that he was breaking the law at all.
He was just, it's horrible.
Yeah, I interviewed him shortly after the raid, and, I asked to see all his paperwork, and he said, David, it hasn't moved. It's been sitting right here on the kitchen table the entire time. And front and center was that certificate that said his rights were restored. And in reality, they were not. And what I'm referring to is the felon in possession of a firearm statute. Before Eric Barlow's bill, Wyoming didn't have that statute. Anytime there was a situation like that, they'd stop somebody, run their name, they're a felon, they find a firearm in the car. Well, it wasn't Wyoming authorities that would prosecute that case. It was always handed off to alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. To get Eric Barlow's so-called restoration of rights bill passed, well, you couldn't give back something that the state hadn't taken, or at least that was the argument on the floor.
Yeah.
But the result is Eric Barlow is the only person in the last 20 years that has written gun control into Wyoming law.
The net result, and I fought hard against it on the floor, the net result is that we still can't absolve anybody of federal gun crimes.
No, I mean, you couldn't do that from the very beginning.
But now we've got state gun crimes piled on top.
So that's Eric Barlow. I mean, he votes with the Democrats almost all the time, over 80%. Claims to be a conservative, yet that word gets thrown around a lot, and Eric Barlow isn't anywhere close to it. So Megan Degenfelder. So she is the current state superintendent of public instruction. And while I've received a lot of responses from listeners about things that Megan Felder may have done that are conservative, we are still looking for the one thing that Megan has done that is actually conservative, because there really isn't anything. Test scores are still in the toilet. There's been no improvement in reading scores, or frankly test scores at all, during her 4 years as state superintendent. She's pretty much voted with the governor. There are exceptions to this, but she's pretty much voted with the governor in lockstep her entire time on the State Lands Board. And I mean, there's really very little difference between Mark Gordon's positions and Megan Degenfelder's. There's and this is a great example of not actually doing anything. It's a piece in the Cowpie entitled, it's in the Jackson Hole News and Guide, and it's entitled "State Superintendent Launches Wyoming Patriot Schools Program." Let me just read you the few opening paragraphs. And I quote, last week, State Superintendent of Public Instruction Megan Degenfelder launched a state program that she said is aimed at advancing civic education and celebrating schools that foster community, country, and character. Now, again, word choice is important. She said, she being Megan Degenfelder, that this program is aimed at advancing civic education and celebrating schools. So if you just took the first paragraph, you would think that there was some program, some system to where we're going to increase civic education. I mean, that wouldn't you take that to mean that?
I could, but I usually am a little skeptical.
Well, yeah. I mean, as you should be, because it's Megan Felder. Here's what it says. At a news conference Thursday, Megan Felder launched the Wyoming Patriot Schools program to recognize schools that are educating children about, quote, both the responsibilities and blessings of American citizenship. What does that mean?
Well, they also use the word character in there.
Yeah.
Read that again. We're gonna build the character, or whatever. And my question is, who determines what character is? Now, I've sat there for 2 years, sitting right behind Julie Jarvis, and there's a character.
She's definitely a character.
But I would guess that her idea of what good character is probably different from mine.
It might be a little bit different.
And if you leave training people to have good character up to the education types that are in charge of the Department of Education, regardless of whether Megan were to stay there or not, and that's something that you can't get past, is the entrenched establishment there. And I'm not talking about the teachers per se. I'm talking about the system of education as it's been contorted over the last 40 or 50 or 60 or 70 years. I am not comfortable with allowing that type of people, anybody that uses the term kiddos, if they're going to determine what good character is, I'm probably going to have a problem.
Okay, so to answer your question, this policy is aimed at celebrating schools that foster community, country, and character. Okay, third paragraph. Quote, civic education should be one of the few things that can still bring us together, and patriotism shouldn't be political, Megan Felder said at the news conference. Now, in the news release, she said that civic education should not leave students cynical about our country. Rather, students should be provided the opportunity to learn our shared values, founding principles, and feel proud to be an American. Let's see here at the news conference, and I'm still looking for something that this thing actually does. The Patriot Schools program was developed in collaboration with the Wyoming Department of Education Citizenship Stakeholder Cabinet, made up of 10 members. The Patriot Schools program will also contribute to Wyoming's 250 task force. Schools can now apply to the Department of Education to receive the, quote, Patriot School designation based on 4 categories: civic education, observance of patriotic traditions and symbols, student participation, all right, on and on and on.
Observance of symbols?
Observance of symbols is what it says. Let me quote it to you.
Okay. I'd like to know what that means.
Yes. Schools can now apply to the Department of Education to receive Patriot School designation based on 4 categories: civic education, observance of patriotic traditions and symbols, and student participation in civic and veteran community efforts, and resources for educators to teach civics effectively. So essentially what this is a bunch of people, a cabinet, that have decided what a Patriot school is, and then the school can then apply to have this designation as a Patriot school. But I ask you, what does this policy do? What changes does it make? What does it force individual school districts to accomplish? Does it do anything?
It's lipstick on a pig.
It is lipstick on a totem pole. It is, I mean, it's ridiculous. There is nothing that it actually does. It's just another layer on top of the Self Admiration Society, which is the Wyoming education system. And it doesn't actually change anything. There's nothing in there that says, well, all right, your teacher has to teach A, B, and C, or students have to achieve X, Y, and Z. It doesn't do any of those things.
Yeah, we brought up a couple of things over the last few years that the legislature would like to see taught in schools, just having to do with, fundamental constitutional theories
Yeah.
or understanding, interpretation, those sorts of things. Um, the pushback was tremendous. We as a legislature are not permitted to dictate any kind of
Curriculum or whatever.
Yeah, curriculum. The word was escaping me. But that's one of the things that is amazing is things that you think would be a slam dunk no-brainer are resisted by folks you oftentimes wouldn't expect.
Right. And a lot of what you are seeing in the governor's race, and I didn't say everything, I said a lot, because we're going to get to another candidate in the race here in just a second. But what you are seeing is a facade of conservatism. You know what a facade is, don't you? Like, if you think of like the old West towns, where like you look at the front of the building and it's got this great little cutout shape and it looks really pretty. But if you look behind the front of the building, you find out that it's just kind of a run-of-the-mill shack. That there's nothing there except what it looks like.
That's why they call them false fronts.
Yes, a false front. It is a facade of conservatism, because there is nothing conservative about Eric Barlow. There is nothing conservative that Eggenfelder has done, or at least that we can locate. And so it is just a false front of conservatism. And yet there's a lot of time and energy being spent on trying to convince you that these people are conservative. Now, a guy that does not have a record, political one anyway, is Brent Behan, and he's the third guy in the race running for governor. Now, Brent is doing very much the same thing that Eric Barlow is doing, is that he is everywhere. He is doing campaign stops pretty much every day of the week, sometimes multiple stops in a day. And so he really is out there campaigning, doing, handshake politics, which, that's the way that you win elections. But he doesn't have, and maybe this is a positive and a negative, but he doesn't have the voting record that both Degenfelder and Eric Barlow do, because he's never been in politics before. Now, he is a military guy. He did run the base on Guam. He's got a long military record, a distinguished one, I might add. But as far as, politics-wise, about the only thing that he's done is he led the People's Initiative for a 50% reduction in your property taxes, which is a monumental task in and of itself. It is really hard to get an initiative on the ballot in Wyoming. It takes a lot of work. But he's been on my program a lot. It was just recently we interviewed him. And if you look at there's a recent article published on the Open Range Record and it's actually the top story right now. It's entitled, "It's a Liberty Issue, Brent Behan in Kemmerer." And there's in there is a part of his interview that he did on Cowboy state politics. That video is the part where I ask him, hey, what's the difference between running a military base and being the governor? Because there is a big difference there. And I think that he gives a pretty thoughtful response. But as far as, the candidates in the gubernatorial race, definitely Brent Behan is the only one that has a conservative thought about how our government ought to be run. The other two, Meggenfelder and Barlow, they're definitely on the other side of things. Definitely. And, again, there's no voting record with Brent Behan, and which is why you got to do a lot of your homework with him. You got to go meet him for yourself, which fortunately he's making that a pretty easy thing to do.
Yeah, I can only say that having sat with him one-on-one for many hours, you don't have to talk to him for very long, where you hear a very fierce, independent, conservative streak, He's a maverick. He doesn't necessarily want to listen to other people, and that can be a weakness. But in this case, I kind of think it's a strength because he's not going to be easily swayed and turned into another monster, another swamp monster.
Well, you got to
That's
think
not
that,
going to happen with him.
well, if you were to become governor, and I see his position as very similar to the first Trump administration. That you've
Yeah.
never been involved in government before. That you do have a group of people around you, some of whom you've already figured out, okay, this person's going to be the attorney general. This person is going to be, they're going to be on this board and this board and this board. So you've got some of those things figured out. But it is the underlying bureaucracy that you have to worry about because the Wyoming government is huge. I think that when I did the back of the envelope math, I think you're talking about 800 positions. Appointed positions.
Yeah, and how are you going to, I don't even have 800 Facebook friends.
I mean, I don't know how you're going to figure that out, but I can tell you what the result is. You're going to have a whole bunch of people coming to you and saying, oh, this guy over here, he's conservative. You should put him on this board.
Yeah.
This person over here, he would be good for that board.
And you're going to have to take some people's words for some things.
Right. And so what happens is, these bureaucrats are going to be, have their job for a lot longer than you are. And so, you're going to get a bunch of people that are entrenched in the bureaucracy that you're going to have to worry about. And I mean, that's one of, the, I don't want to call it a failing. That's one of the challenges of a new candidate. And now, of course, the other two are going to make that argument against Brent and say, well, he doesn't have any experience. Well, that's
But
said, a loaded question.
Who are those people going to appoint?
Right. Right.
There's little doubt in my mind.
If you get Degenfelder or Barlow, the administration is going to look very similar to what it does now, because they're two people that really do have the same type of thinking about things. So let's go ahead and take our third break, and when we come back, we'll finish up with the program. Back in a minute.
Are you tired of all the meaningless political drivel floating around right now? Endless commentary that really doesn't have anything backing it up? Do you long for the days of true investigative journalism coming from an authoritative source who really doesn't care how popular and apparently good-looking a politician is? Fortunately for you, that's what I do on Cowboy State Politics. New episodes are published every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and you can get them anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest way is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There, you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles I might bring up during the course of the program. Cowboy State Politics Live, the program you're listening to right now, is broadcast every Tuesday through Friday beginning at 8 a.m. Pay attention to all of that other block-headed nonsense if you want. Just make sure that you don't miss an episode of Cowboy State Politics. And now, back to our program.
Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by the man upstairs. It is an awesome thing to be able to do what you love for a living and to be able to do this every day for you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for everything you do for Cowboy State Politics. So last week, there was a Supreme Court decision that came out. In fact, it came out on the 9th, and it is a fascinating one. And essentially, the Supreme Court declined to review a case out of Ohio. And the long and the short of it is a very clearly Democrat candidate. He ran for chairman of the DNC, so definitely a Democrat, decided to run in a congressional race as a Republican. Remember that phrase, because the Wyoming media uses that all the time, as a Republican. They don't say, candidate X is a Republican. No. They're running as a Republican, as if that's your identity or something.
That's just me, and they say he's an oath keeper.
Yeah. So anyway, what happened? This guy signs up to run for Congress as a Republican, and a voter files a complaint with the Elections Board against him, saying this guy is not really a Republican, because in the past, while he was running for the DNC, he said that the way that Democrats should win is to infiltrate the Republican Party, run as Republicans, and that's the only way that they can win. So then he registers, complaint is filed, and then there is another Facebook post in which he says, well, yeah, of course I'm standing by what I said during my DNC run. We need to run as Republicans. The election board throws him off the ballot, and then he files a lawsuit claiming that, that his free speech rights have been violated. The federal court then rules that the state elections board was absolutely correct in throwing him off of the ballot, not because for a couple of reasons. And let me just see here. I've got a couple of quotations pulled that I want to read to you. So from the ruling, this is from the Ohio Secretary of State. He said, quote, "To be clear, candidates can change party affiliation. Here, however, Mr. Ronan," and Ronan is the guy, the red coat, "Mr. Ronan's statement do not show a change in affiliation, but instead highlight his ongoing mission to run Democrats as Republicans to infiltrate the party." And so the Secretary of State threw him off the ballot because his public statements didn't match actually being a Republican. From the ruling itself, listen to this. And so this is the judge writing in the court ruling from the U.S. District Court. Quote, "It cannot be the case that a state must allow a candidate on a partisan ballot, even if he lied about his party affiliation, simply because the First Amendment is implicated. To do so would subject virtually every electoral regulation to strict scrutiny, hamper the ability of states to run efficient and equitable elections, and compel federal courts to rewrite state electoral codes. The Constitution does not require that result." So in other words, the First Amendment is not implicated in this situation. The guy said he was one thing. He lied on his affirmation that he was a member of the Republican Party. And then he registered as a Democrat. He was registered as a Republican off the ballot. He testified that he's running as a Republican in a way he understands the party. And this is, I think, one of the more important points here. So this is another from the original court order. Quote, "He testified that he is running as a Republican in a, quote, in a way he understands the party's ideals, and that he should be able to present his progressive ideology as a Republican and let the voters decide what is or is not a Republican." Now, what does that sound like? To me, that smacks of Gail Simmons from beginning to end. It smacks of people like Tom Walters and Lloyd Larson and Steve Harshman that, well, we have to let the voters decide what is and is not a Republican.
It's all relativism. That's what they're coming down to.
That's what they want.
Yeah, that's what I mean. You get rid of things are black and white. You get rid of male and female. It's all the same kind of thinking where you muddy the water and words don't mean anything anymore. It's just whatever you feel it means.
Well, exactly right. so that you can say whatever you want to, you can say you are whatever you want to, whatever you want, but that doesn't make it so. That you can claim to be a Republican, but that doesn't mean that you're one of those. And how do we know what a Republican is? Well, the Republican Party is a private corporation. It is at the state level. It is at the federal level. And so a private corporation can decide whatever criteria they want, so you can be a member of the club.
It defines itself.
Yes. And the Republican Party defines itself through the Republican Party platform. So in other words, this guy's statements, this guy's beliefs didn't match with what being a Republican is. And so his challenge to the court was, well, voters should decide what is or is not a Republican. Well, the Ohio court, or the U.S. District Court, rather, completely disagreed with that and said that, no, the secretary was right in removing him from the ballot. Now, the Supreme Court declined to hear that challenge because, and the Supreme Court declined it for a different reason. In that, and you've got to read the order. The judge's order. There's a link to it in the article on the Open Range Record. But in it, they said that, well, they're denying the appeal because the guy lied. It wasn't necessarily, their denial wasn't necessarily about what he said before he registered to run for office. It was, I think that was my computer. Sorry about that. It was what he said after. So he registers as a Republican, and then later he posts on Facebook, and I can probably find this for you real quick. He posts on Facebook that he is not a Republican. And let me just go through here, and maybe I can show you this.
While you're looking for that, just to entertain the good folks, I can't remember how many years ago, but several years ago, you and I and a couple others did a series of shows in the Ramble Room. And we went through the Republican Party platform plank by plank and just discussed it. I really think we should revisit that. Not necessarily go bring up those recordings, but I think we need to maybe bring a couple other folks in and have a little bit of a round table and just go through the planks one by one and
find out what they mean.
Freshen them in everybody's mind. I think we lose sight of what a Republican is, and that's the definition right there. And that's going to be very important in this summer in the races.
Okay, so the article you're looking for, go ahead and put this on the screen, Ken. This is the piece that I'm working from right now. And if you scroll down about halfway through, there it is. There's the link that shows you the judge's order. And if you look at the judge's order, and I don't know if you can read it. Yeah, you should be able to read it on the screen. But it says, this is Samuel Ronan, the redcoat, who's commenting here. And he says, I believe very clearly that I very clearly mentioned in that very same DNC chair race that Democrats, if they wanted to govern and retain the trust of Americans, would have to primary Republicans in deep red districts as Republicans just to get a foot in the door. So if I'm doing anything, it's following the argument I made on that stage. That said, I'm not fighting on behalf of the traitorous Democrats who just crossed the party line to vote for more ICE funding. I'm not a grifter. I'm running for office in the party of the dominant district fighting for the working class. So in that, he very clearly says, yeah, I'm a Democrat and I'm infiltrating the party. That is the reason why the Supreme Court denied his appeal, that he admits that he's lying. The reason why he got thrown off the ballot is related to that, but it's that his beliefs did not line up with the beliefs of the Republican Party. And so the question is, how could this case affect the state of Wyoming? And I think that's a difficult connection to make, apart from the rhetoric of it. Because in the Republican Party bylaws, it defines what a Republican is as somebody who registers as a Republican. So that would have to be changed in order for this to have any effect whatsoever.
It's real similar to identity theft.
Oh yeah,
it's
very much so.
It's for all intents and purposes, you look like you're posing as something in order to foil, and that's
You're
what
lying
goes
to
on.
voters.
That's what goes on all over Wyoming and has for years.
Every election.
And it's gotten worse over the last 20 years or so. You remember we were talking about Dave Friedenthal the other day, probably the last Democrat to hold an, a high office in Wyoming. The Democrat Party has weakened itself by not attracting those people that are close to them. And I think part of the reason for that is they've gotten so far to the left, so far out there, that a lot of people they look at that and say, "Well, I'm more conservative than that. I must be a Republican."
Oh, I think it's much more devious than that. I've been in courthouses where I've overheard the clerk saying, "No,
Oh, yeah.
if you wanna have any voice, you got to register as a Republican."
Yeah, we've heard that.
You know, that's not how our system works. And you know, your point is well taken, Ken, that you know, a lot of these people, they have done exactly what this same guy, this Ronan guy, has done. They have registered as Republicans to infiltrate the party, whether explicitly or implicitly. That's what they're doing. Now, and I think that what we can look at what happened with the Supreme Court and Ohio and say that's absolutely what needs to happen here, because I mean you are, you know, it's a form of, like you said, Ken, identity theft. It's a form of fraud. I mean, you're claiming to be something that you're not.
So I want to go back to something I said earlier about my own Facebook thread. And I think, you know, how do you tell the difference? How do you know a true Republican, a true conservative from a fake one? All you have to do is ask them 3 or 4 questions.
Yep.
What is the proper governmental response, or how do we handle this issue? What do we do there? And if their answer is government,
Yeah,
they're not conservative.
exactly.
And that's pretty much, you know, there are a few things. Government is a necessary evil. There are some things like not self,
Roads and
defense
police forces.
and roads, bridges, police. There are things like that government should and do. That's the most effective way to get it done. But when you start talking about child hunger, when you start talking about ad infinitum, if their answer is another government program,
Yeah.
they're not conservative.
Any government program. And it's so easy. And I think that, you know, conservatives get caught up on, and the hot topic of the day is the Wyoming Business Council. But, you know, conservatives get caught up in this. Well, of course we want to, you know, promote business. Of course we want business development.
Our
Yeah, we do.
children
But
will leave if we don't.
yeah, we do. But you don't need government to do that. If you have a you know, tax climate that is favorable to business, if you have a regulatory environment that isn't burdensome, you know, if you build it, they will come. And it's to say that government has to get involved to do that is absolutely ridiculous. So, you know, Sheridan is probably one of the only success stories for the Wyoming Business Council. But the question is, could these things have happened without state government? Could the citizens of Sheridan have said, you know what, I think a business park would be great. How do we make that happen?
We may not have attracted the same businesses that are here now that the Wyoming Business Council did.
I don't know that that's true.
I say may. But Sheridan is going to grow
Oh, yeah.
because,
All you got to do is drive around the outskirts of Sheridan, and
Yeah.
you'll see development all over the
and
place.
this is one of the last great places around.
I
So
agree.
it's inevitable. If anything, we almost need a anti-business thing to put the brakes on. But
Well,
that's just me speaking.
and a good question to ask of any of these folks that are, you know, pro Wyoming Business Council, pro state involvement, pro government is the solution to the last government solution. Ask them, so why is it that all of these things couldn't be done without the Wyoming Business Council? Why is it? And the answer you're going to get almost all the time is money. So are you telling me that there isn't enough money to develop a community? Do you really think that that's
well,
true?
how much money would it take, Josh Durrell? I'd need $1 billion.
Well, Josh Durrell says you need
Yeah.
$1 billion, but you know there is a hockey arena that's down in the middle of town, and it was purchased by the Marsh family.
That's a great example, and that is a tremendous benefit for the city.
Yeah,
It was a tremendous benefit for the Mars family. Well, I shouldn't say tremendous to them. It was pretty much a drop in the bucket,
sure.
but it was there.
Oh yeah, and I mean it's a great facility. So the question is, why does that building exist if government is required for all of these things? Well, the government is not required for all of these things. There is a tremendous amount of wealth in this state, and one of the reasons why you don't see, folks on county commissions or city councils or whatever reaching out to some of these people to say, "Hey, would you like your name on the side of a building?" Is because it is much easier to take your money and spend it than it is to do the legwork and to round up the private investment to do all of these sorts of things.
For one thing, a private investor is going to be pretty particular about your business plan. Where's that money going to go?
Sure.
Are you going to be successful? And a lot of the things that the Wyoming Business Council has done is say, okay, if you failed at that, if you couldn't raise private funding, then come to us.
Okay, so let me.
That's frightening.
Okay, so Ken, your wife owns a library. Okay, it's right over there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we should know a little bit about libraries. What is the name of some of the more famous libraries in this country?
Carnegie.
The Carnegie Libraries. There's one over in Johnson County. It's now a museum, but it was one of the first. It was the first library there. So how did those happen? So it was a private individual who said, "You know what? I think we need libraries."
That's how we get it.
So are you telling
And
me
there's
it
no
can't
porn
be
in there
done?
either. Hey, pull up on the open range record. Pull up that lead picture of Diane's library, if you will.
Yeah.
'Cause there's an article in there about that too.
There you
And
go.
thank you for doing that. We'll have Diane as a guest on here at some point. So there's that picture. And I want you to notice, if you look through that open door, you see that chair back there? If you look carefully, that's where I'm sitting right now.
Yeah. So that's the library.
Yeah, and my point is, we didn't take, you and I didn't go, we didn't even find, I'm trying to make this factual as possible. We paid for this ourselves.
Yeah. Every bit of it.
Paid for this studio. We paid for the library is private. Now others have, and that's why I hesitated with that. Others have given gifts and said, "This is something I want to see," and go on. But we didn't go to government and say we need a grant.
Okay, so let me give you another example. The Johnson County Fairgrounds. Okay, not the first example that everybody would think of when we're talking about the Wyoming Business Council, but how did it come to be? Well, the first rodeo in Wyoming actually happened in Bighorn. And then some guys got together and said, "You know what? We need a straight up rodeo arena. We need a fairgrounds where we can hold all of these
This
events."
is a good thing. We need to house it.
Yeah, and we need to do a lot more of this. And so a couple of guys got together, and we're talking in the late 1800s. They got together and they raised over $300,000 to build the Johnson County Fairgrounds. Now, I haven't gone to the inflation calculator, but I would be willing to bet that 300 grand in 1880 is several $1 million today. So how were they able to do it if government was not involved? It's because private individuals said this would be a good thing, and they went to their town council or whatever, and they said, "Hey, we want to build a fairgrounds."
Two other factors in there. With lesser taxes, the private individuals had more of their own money as discretionary tax. But the other thing that I think is even bigger.
No, there was no tax involved.
Well, yeah, the other thing I think is even bigger is them saying, right now, if you say this ought to happen, well, we could get government money, we could do that. Just look at, for example, the shooting range out of Cody.
Oh boy.
If it wasn't even thought of that you could milk the government for that, they wouldn't have done it. They'd have just gone privately. And that's what we need to do, is get back to the idea that tax dollars aren't there to be handed out willy-nilly.
No, they're not. And it's, the whole idea that you have to have government involvement to do all of these things is just not true on face. And, Okay, so you need some investment before you can build a lot of these things. Fine, go talk to them. There are
Well,
some extraordinarily wealthy people in this state
yeah.
that would love to do that.
Some other examples on a grand scale, SpaceX.
Yeah,
Only government could afford to go to the moon.
that's not true at all.
Probably not.
No, it's not true at all. But we have conditioned ourselves to believe that government has to be involved, and that's just not true at all. However, I mean, but that really is the difference. The question that you have in just about every election, you're going to have candidates that say government has to be involved, and it is only government that can do, these sorts of things. And then on the other side, you have conservatives that say, you know what, we really don't need government. We don't need them to do these things. If there a need arises, private industry will take care of it. How is it that we have a railroad? Private industry. How is it that we have all these amazing libraries? Private industry.
Every time you bring up railroad, I think of that debacle in California.
Yeah, the high-speed rail.
Yeah, I saw some funny little meme on Facebook where the rail was shifting.
Oh boy. Yeah, I mean it's that thing is a boondoggle we could talk about all day long. All right, well that pretty much burns up another busy broadcast 2 hours. Make sure that you don't miss a single moment of Cowboy State Politics Live. We'll be back tomorrow with another 2 hours of the program. But for now, from the base of the Bighorns, I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.